Hello, my name is Alexandra Kerr, and I will be presenting on this article written about ratites and what ancient DNA has revealed about their relationships. So ratites are giant flightless birds of the southern hemisphere. Within this phylogenetic tree, we have the moa, the elephant bird, rheas, ostriches, tinamous, kiwis, and found in our own backyard here in Australia, the emu and the terrifying cassowary. They live and have lived on different land masses and all share similar characteristics in their prehistoric-like appearances. Their defining similar characteristic is their shared basal palate structure, earning them the term paleognaths. Ratites currently roaming our Earth are one of the only bird groups composed of giant herbivores. Examples of the ratites that have gone extinct are the moa from New Zealand that stood as tall as 3 meters and weighed up to 250 kilograms, and the elephant birds from Madagascar, which were between 2 and 3 meters tall and weighed up to 275 kilograms. Here is a photo of myself standing next to a statue of a moa for personal reference. However, also a part of this group of mostly enormous flightless birds is an unsuspecting little cutie from New Zealand called the kiwi. The kiwi are highly specified omnivores, which have been elusive for decades due to their nocturnal nature and the way they burrow into the ground to sleep, which sounds impossible for ratite birds, but is entirely possible because they are at least 2 orders of magnitude smaller than their counterparts. Due to their flightless nature and body design, research from decades of dedicated scientists have been able to show that their relation to previous ratites exists. These birds are of high interest to the Southern Hemisphere biogeographers due to the fact that it appears that their flightlessness was a worldwide parallel evolution, evolving at least 6 separate times, and their gigantism evolving a minimum of 5 separate times. In other groups, avian gigantism and flightlessness usually are only observed on island environments that are free from any mammalian predators or competitors. However, the land masses these ratites choose to live on have a diverse fauna, making the evolution an unexpected and intriguing one. The journey that science took in order to piece this mysterious evolutionary puzzle together was an interesting one that involves ancient DNA. In this article from Science magazine, volume 344, the scientists and authors discuss how studies have been difficult in the past due to poor molecular preservation of elephant bird remains, who through their research have been revealed to have been the missing key in this evolutionary tree. Ancient DNA, or aDNA, is DNA recovered from ancient organic materials such as tissues, bone, and teeth, in this case, the fossils of a long extinct ratite birds. Through using this modern method of fossil analysis, scientists were able to discover that the elephant bird that lived and went extinct on Madagascar, after the breakup of the supercontinent Gondwana, actually more closely resembles the New Zealand moa. And by analysing the further morphology, they have found a close relationship between these taxa. Due to their overall appearance, this was somewhat predicted. However, their study of ancient DNA actually found that there was great support for a relationship closer between the gigantic elephant bird and the tiny kiwi, suggesting that they are in fact the sister taxa on this phylogenetic tree. The authors of this paper discussed that the genes they used were in the hybridization enrichment within a solution of RNA erased from both modern-day paleognath mitochondrial genome sequences and almost complete mitochondrial genomes pieced together to form the ancient DNA from 2 separate fossils of extinct elephant birds. And according to the authors, this proved that the elephant bird and the kiwi are unequivocally sister taxa. These two New Zealand ratites, the kiwi and the extinct moa, are the keys to dismissing the speciation by continental vicariance theory. Due to their relationship with each other and their relationship to other ratites across the world. Originally, it was believed that the evolution of the kiwi and the moa on the island of New Zealand happened through vicariance speciation driven by the breakup of the supercontinent Gondwana. This was presumed based on similar evolutionary models that had been studied previously and the described sequence of continental rifting. This is the idea that all of these ratites evolved from an ancestor that lived on the supercontinent Gondwana and then lost its ability to fly. Then, as Gondwana broke up, they were all scattered across the globe and on their separate continents and islands and evolved from there. The speciation by continental vicariance theory would mean that the moa and the kiwi would be the closest taxa due to the fact that they both lived on New Zealand and existed most geographically closely to each other. Again, in theory, they would share a common flightless ancestor that got stuck on New Zealand as it moved away from everyone else and evolved separately from there. But new subsequent DNA studies have suggested that the kiwi birds are more closely related to our Australian emus and cassowaries, and the closest currently living relative that scientists have found to the extinct giant moa is not the little kiwi at all, but is on the other side of the globe, the South American tinamou, who is actually able to fly. As well as all of these errors speciation by continental vicariance does not explain the close relationship these scientists found between the elephant bird and the kiwi. As Madagascar and New Zealand have never been directly connected to each other. And the molecular dates calculated from the ancient DNA and kiwi DNA suggests that these two taxa diverged after the breakup of Gondwana, which would be impossible for a common flightless ancestor due to the oceans between them. When the supercontinent Gondwana drifted apart, separating into other land masses, Africa and Madagascar were the first fragments to split apart from the rest. They separated completely from Gondwana and each other in the early Cretaceous at 130 to 100 million years ago. Scientists were able to prove that the dating of the evolution of the giant moa and the kiwi bird did not support previous theories by pairing their DNA studies from this article with what is known as a molecular clock. The idea of the molecular clock is a timeline created using molecular dating, showing a history for a specific species based on big points in their evolutionary history, marked by large known events and extinctions that are widely accepted points in time. By creating a molecular clock, you can place different points in the evolution of a species between various mass extinctions, for example, and other events, giving you a timeline of when each taxa separated and evolved. The scientists in this article used this and cooperated with fossil records to set certain points in ratite history. Piecing the DNA and fossils we have of these ratites and extinct ratites, such as the elephant bird, together with a molecular clock based on the breakup of the supercontinent Gondwana and the extinction of various species, proved to be a critical step, as there was not a substantial enough fossil record alone to truly understand the great journey these taxa have taken. Using the same molecular clock to place other appearances of flightless avian herbivores, such as Gastornithids in Europe and North America, Dromnorithids in Australia, also proved to support this interpretation. And combining all of these dates, the authors of this article suggest that the evolution of flightless ratites was first seen in what is referred to the ecological vacuum, caused by a burst of life into the space left after the mass extinction of the dinosaurs. Placing it at this time on their molecular clock also suggests that the difference in size between similar lineages may be a result of the arrival of ancestral flighted paleonath, coupled with competitive exclusion. This made it difficult for birds such as the kiwi to grow to compete with the giant moa after its arrival, meaning that it made sense for it to stay so small, seeing as it couldn't compete with its neighbor. In this article, authors explain that the theory of evolution of flightless species is not supportive of the idea of speciation by continental vicariance. Instead, their findings suggest a more complex evolutionary history. They go on to explain that specifically the relationship between the giant moa and the tinamou suggests that flightlessness has evolved separately multiple times in the paleonath history. They make sure to say that to their knowledge, no previous study has suggested this relationship because of the disparate morphology, ecology, and distribution of these two groups. This is to say that due to the fact that they are on continents on the other side of the world to each other, no one may have even thought before to study the relationship within their DNA between these two seemingly quite different birds, let alone hypothesizing that it is possibly closer than the relationship between their fellow ratites, which are geographically closer, like the kiwi to the moa or their taxa in Australia. The phylogenetic placement that this article suggests with their findings of the elephant bird and kiwi as sister taxa is their largest piece of evidence that negates the previously held ideas in the history of the ratites. The author theorizes that instead it seems to them that the common ancestor of elephant bird and kiwi was most likely capable of flight, and not just flight, but long distance flight over the oceans to faraway lands on separate continents. This is supported by a small kiwi relative from the early Miocene of New Zealand that possibly was capable of flight as well. The idea that this ancestor capable of flight existed is also supported by the existence of the tinamou, who is a part of this phylogenetic tree, its taxa diverging from a shared common ancestor of the giant moa, and as the tinamou currently exists, it is also capable of flight. They even go on to say that they suggest their findings are consistent with the possible existence of a once diverse and widespread clade capable of flying. The ecological vacuum these authors refer to is a time directly after the extinction of the dinosaurs, in which there was a burst of life left living in a world with less competition and predators. During the time directly after this extinction, up to 10 million years after, a lot of the mammals did originally remain relatively small and unspecialized. The authors hypothesized that this provided a perfect window of opportunity for the evolution of these large, flightless herbivores in continental bird lineages. Finding a comfortable place to live, they took advantage of the space left. The authors of this article delve into the evolution of flightlessness and gigantitude of these birds in different areas of the world throughout time. They provide their findings for these assumptions, and this article starts as a fantastic starting point for this conversation and further study into the taxa relationship between ratites, particularly those previously thought not to be directly related at all, but like their finding of the relationship between the elephant bird and the kiwi using modern sequencing of ancient DNA. However, there is still significant gaps missing with these lineages, and it's exciting that the points raised by these authors are, and as exciting as the points raised by these authors are, I look forward to one day when we can learn about the great migrating birds throughout history that served as a common ancestor to all these magnificent ratites existing in a world newly free from dinosaurs, soaring through the sky in search of their new homes. Thank you for listening to my presentation.